two men knocked on a museum door at 1 in the morning. The guard opened it. 81 minutes later, $500 million worth of art had vanished into the night. No alarms. No witnesses. Ever. This is not a story about a robbery that went wrong. This is a story about a robbery that went perfectly. And that's what makes it so terrifying. Because when a crime goes wrong, it leaves clues. It leaves mistakes. But when everything goes exactly according to plan, sometimes the only thing left behind is a mystery that refuses to be solved. It's March 18, 1990. St. Patrick's Day had just wrapped up across Boston. The streets were loud, messy, distracted. Bars were closing, taxis were honking, people were stumbling home through the cold night air. The city was alive in the way it always is after a long celebration. The kind of night where nobody notices anything, and somebody knew that. The Gardner Museum sat quiet in the Fenway neighborhood, its stone walls dark, its galleries empty. The building looked more like an old European palace than a modern museum, with narrow corridors and rooms filled with priceless works of art. Just 2 security guards holding down the overnight shift. 2 young guys. Nothing about this night felt different from any other. The museum had closed hours earlier. The lights were low. The galleries were silent except for the occasional hum of security equipment and the distant sound of traffic outside. But someone had been watching this museum for a long time, studying its routines, learning its weaknesses. And tonight, they were finally ready to move. So who were these 2 men, and how did they know exactly when to strike? At exactly 1:24 in the morning, the buzzer at the museum's side entrance went off. A 23-year-old guard named Rick Abath walked over to the intercom. On the other side stood 2 men, dressed head to toe in Boston police uniforms, badges catching the light, looking completely official. Their patrol car wasn't visible from the entrance camera, but everything else about them looked right. One of them leaned in and said they'd received a report of a disturbance and needed to come inside. It sounded routine. It sounded completely believable. And the museum had a strict policy. Unannounced police visits required verification before anyone opened that door. Rick Abath knew the policy. He knew it word for word. The rules were simple. Confirm the officers. Call the police station if necessary. Never unlock the door unless everything checks out. But it was late. The request sounded normal. And the uniforms looked real. For a moment, nothing about the situation seemed suspicious. And he opened the door anyway. The moment those 2 men stepped into the lobby, the act dropped. No badges. No disturbance report. No police department waiting on the other end of a radio. They moved fast. Within seconds, both guards were face down on the floor, hands cuffed behind their backs, eyes taped shut, mouths sealed. They were dragged to the basement and chained to pipes in separate rooms so they couldn't communicate, couldn't do anything at all. The guards had no idea what was happening above them. They couldn't see. They couldn't even tell how many people were inside the building. And then, silence. The 2 men were completely alone inside one of the most valuable private art collections on the planet. No panic buttons going off. The motion detectors logged their movement through the galleries, but no one was watching the monitors. For 81 minutes, this museum was theirs. 81 uninterrupted minutes to walk through the galleries, choose exactly what they wanted, and disappear before anyone realized what had happened. But what they did next, and what they chose to leave behind, is what truly makes this case impossible to explain. They moved through the Dutch room first, deliberately, like they'd walked those floors before. They didn't rush. They didn't panic. Every movement seemed planned. They took a Vermeer. They took 3 Rembrandts, including his only known seascape, a masterpiece painted in 1633 that had never been replicated. They pulled sketches off walls. They took a Manet, a Flink, an ancient Chinese bronze vessel sitting in a case. In some places they carefully cut the canvases directly out of their frames. In others they removed entire pieces from the wall. They even paused long enough to search certain rooms more carefully, as if they were checking a list. 13 pieces total, worth an estimated $500 million. And they carried them out like they were loading a moving truck. No alarms stopped them. No guards interrupted them. No one outside the building had any idea what was happening inside those dark museum halls. But here's the detail that investigators could never get past. There were paintings in that museum worth just as much, hanging right there, easy to grab, and the thieves walked straight past them. They ignored some of the most valuable works in the building entirely. Masterpieces that any ordinary art thief would have taken without hesitation. Either they didn't know what they were doing, or they knew exactly what they were there for. And someone else had told them. The next morning, a staff member walked in for a regular shift, and stopped dead in the doorway. The frames, the empty, golden frames, were lying on the floor of the Dutch room exactly where the thieves had dropped them. Some still hung on the walls, empty, the cut edges of the missing canvases visible inside the frames. The canvases were gone. The building was undisturbed. No broken windows. No forced doors. No alarms triggered during the theft. No fingerprints that led anywhere. The greatest art theft in history had happened in the middle of a major American city, and it had left almost nothing behind. Almost. Because what investigators found in the security logs that morning would raise a question that has never, not once in 35 years, been answered.